here to talk about the effects of unscheduled downtime in the plant and how it can be, what we can do to reduce unscheduled downtime. You know, we've seen some of the stats from, that we've been publishing for a while at ARC of the $65 billion worth of systems that are at the end of their useful life, and of which about 53 billion of that install base is over 20 years old, and that we forecast that about 5% of potential lost process production is lost just as a result of having systems that can't, that as a result of unscheduled downtime. You know, so looking at some of the stats, that can be 2 to 5% of lost production in plants. We've an example of $10,000 an hour at a natural gas compression station. And the difference of cost between unplanned downtime versus the cost of scheduled downtime is about 10 times. And it causes companies to make about a 5 to 10% increase in things like inventory and labor costs, just as a result of having to factor in that issue. You know, sometimes unscheduled downtime is a result of equipment failure, nuisance trips, but sometimes the downtime itself causes damage to those assets and other assets because it's, as well as sometimes issues of worker safety. And reduced profitability, reduced efficiency is certainly some of the many effects. Now, what you have is, you know, some of the causes can be based on the assets themselves. Sometimes the causes is the fact that there hasn't been enough proper training of some of the various individuals in the plant. So it is both an asset issue and sometimes can be a training issue. Some of the things that can help offset the chances of unscheduled downtime are certainly having systems that adhere to industry standards, and you have the ability to better work together, and makes it a little bit easier certainly to do diagnostics when it comes to figuring out what might be the cause. You know, some of the recommendations we have, certainly virtualization is very, very important to make sure that you have at least a virtual backup of systems. You'll hear some virtualization stories here today. Other considerations certainly is, you know, as you're going through for virtualization, you know, the issue, especially in an IIoT world, the loss of any connection is a problem. You know, at one time you were worried about the connections, you know, the flow levels, temperatures, pressures, on and off connections that might go to a PLC, DCS, or a PAC. But as these low-cost sensors are being installed in assets and sending information up to the cloud, say, for asset performance management, the criticality of those measurements and the ability to keep those measurements up is now as important as your traditional control system measurements. You know, companies certainly want to, implement disaster recovery. In many cases, this is just making sure that there's a backup of all the data in the cloud at some of the locations. Some people, again, so we sometimes find it funny at some clients that are against the cloud, but they have disaster recovery programs, and all their information is being sent to some off-site servers. And they'll say, but we don't have a cloud solution, we have a disaster recovery solution. But if they're against the cloud but pro-disaster recovery, that's fine with us. And some of the things that accelerate solving issues of unscheduled downtime are when you get IT/OT convergence has been very, very helpful. Because what we find is that taking the best of what OT brings to the world and the best of what IT brings to the world, so leveraging a lot of the more state-of-the-art technologies and cybersecurity expertise from IT, but the ability to understand the process and understand real-time manufacturing, putting that together also is a positive effect on reducing unscheduled downtime. So in a quick summary, again, a lot of the consequences as far as reduced profitability, reduced KPIs such as OEE, but thinking in terms now of standards, and you'll hear some of that from our 5 speakers today. And again, the continuation of OT-IT convergence will also go to great lengths to help with unscheduled downtime. So, just one last question for you as we're transitioning for speakers. But what is your most important consideration in choosing a solution to reduce downtime and increase your KPIs? So if you have your app open while we change speakers, that would be great if you could answer that question. And we're going to get started. So Nancy DuPont.